So welcome everybody. This is May's Shift Community Seminar. It's a sort of meeting space for 1 hour on the last Wednesday of every odd month at noon. And it's for all of the friends, family and clients of Future Shift to kind of come together, experience, share, listen to a superstar from the community. And in our meetings, we often have conversations that are like, So hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's good to see such a turnout. Couple of highlights from our last 2 months. The first being that we are developing a new look and brand. It's sort of very similar to the last brand. It's quite important. Well, it's very interesting for me as the creative director, but anybody but me don't really notice, which is fine. But it's been exciting anyway, changing the font and increasing the thickness of the logo, getting new signs and business cards, that kind of thing. It really feels like we're moving forward. So expect some more jellyfish and lots of illustrations, making it a bit more us across the board. And this is all coming together in a new website, which we're going to be launching hopefully next month, which is being built right now. You've probably had an interaction with one of me, Will, or Tom about case studies, and we've been collecting lots of case studies to kind of spread the good word of what kind of companies can go through B Corp with us and how they've done it. Culture Shift, our service that we released last quarter, is showing real value. It's kind of being used as an additional service to B Corp journeys. A lot of you have taken our impact mapping workshop, which is perfectly complementary to a section in B Corp, but also has its own standalone value. We've really been enjoying giving them and improving on them as time goes on, and we've got a set of workshops, around 10 now, that we're really proud of and excited to kind of share with everybody going on that B Corp journey to really deepen it and shift the culture really, as well as the business with the certification. Tom's also going to be heading up a net zero service. We're going to move into carbon as another additional service. And this is going to be for NHS suppliers, because there's been quite an interesting development in that front. The many people, companies that supply to the NHS got a warning recently saying in 12 months time, in April, around 12 months, in April next year, if you don't have a net zero strategy, you're not going to be considered for bids. And this is kind of crunch time for a lot of suppliers when it comes to carbon. As B Corps and aspiring B Corps, you're all in a fantastic place ahead of the curve with all of this, but we're starting to see that majority come up because of necessity really now, which is quite an interesting move for sustainability as it mainstreams and moves beyond the innovators like most of the people on, or all of the people on this call. Another slightly less much more interesting and less businessy development, but I've been walking to work past the People's Republic of Stokes Croft. If you're from Bristol, you'll know this. It's a kind of event space and Chinaware shop, and the other day I went in and bought a whole load of anarchist mugs to really sort of spice up the meetings a little bit. So this one says, "If we die, we're taking you with us," with a number of bees. You'll get little snippets of the anarchist mugs, so look out for them as little Easter eggs in your calls from now on. So that's a little update on what we're doing. Over to Tom and Adam.
Amazing. Thanks, Oscar. I feel a little bit hypocritical because actually my anarchist mug is boycott Tesco, and I actually get my meal deal from Tesco every day. So yeah, Reed, what does that tell you about the human condition? I don't know, but I like the mugs. Adam, so just to get you kick-started, could you tell us about, you're one of the directors of APG, Ian, the other directors also on this call. Tell us about how you came to work there. What's the history of APG? What made you want to work there, and what are you guys about as a business, and what do you do?
Okay, well, thanks, Tom. Thanks for inviting us to come share some of our experiences with this sort of B Corp journey with everyone that's on the call, and really interested to hear other perspectives as well as my own voice, which I can get quite tired of quite quickly. But APG. So APG stands for the Architecture and Planning Group. It was founded in 1992. The founding directors have since matured and moved on, and it's been left in hopefully the safe hands of Ian and myself. Personally, I did my work experience with APG when I was 14 years old. It's quite a few years ago now. I then went to university, and whilst I was studying, I was working at APG and took it over in 2018. 2019, Ian joined me to kind of diversify what we're offering. Up until sort of 2019, we just sort of focused on architecture and master planning, but Ian's brought urban design and landscape architecture together. So our sort of focus, if you will, is about trying to bring architecture and the sort of the built environment and the natural environment together through design. So that's kind of our real focus. Ian and I were brought together over a project which we worked on for 10 years, which some of you may know as the Wave in Bristol. That was one of the kind of real sort of focuses where Ian's skills as a landscape architect and APG's kind of collective skills as architects sort of came together to create something quite innovative, pioneering, and quite considered about kind of quantum of carbon that was embodied in the project. It was a big number. So I'm saying like 18,000 tons, but we designed out sort of 600 tons through being quite sort of conscientious with design thinking. So that kind of gives you a little flavour about what we're about. We do residential projects, we do master planning, we've got some zero carbon, energy positive projects where we're trying to give back and through regenerative design, as opposed to just sort of taking materials and building with them and thinking about the longevity of the legacy and what we can do in the immediate, sort of target those net zero 2030, which is hugely ambitious, or 2050 sort of levels. We work on education projects, we work in the University of Bristol amongst other clients as well. So the sort of breadth and scale which we work in is quite broad, and that kind of keeps it interesting for us. As much as I'd just like to do surf lakes the whole time, I don't think that's going to have the biggest impact in what we do. Geographically, we're based in Bristol and in Cornwall, and we service the whole of the UK, but predominantly the southwest. It's probably no surprise that that's where we're based and where our projects are. Beautiful part of the world and an enjoyable canvas to work on.
Amazing. Thanks, Adam. And you guys actually aren't too far from Stokes Croft yourself, so you guys probably know the China shop we were talking about. Not to bring the mugs back up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we came to your office. It's a great location. And one thing I think it's worth saying, so everyone knows, is I remember when we kind of first met, started talking about B Corp, is you guys definitely felt like when you were exploring B Corp and getting certified, it wasn't going to just be a little add-on to your marketing campaign. It was like, here's something we already feel like we're doing sustainability, we're already doing regenerative design, we're already doing these great things. We just want to demonstrate it and in fact hold ourselves to a higher standard, which was really cool. And I think, Adam, you had like quite a cool story as to why you wanted to go B Corp, why you were inspired and motivated to go, and that may have impacted some of the things we've done. So I wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so. Personally, I've been interested in sustainability since I started studying in 2003, 2004. And that was kind of the big focus as to what my personal interests were in architecture. And as my role kind of matured through the company, we were able to develop our thinking in that direction alongside the right sort of projects and fitting with the right clients. But one of the kind of defining moments for me with a focus on B Corp, there was a real light bulb moment, was suddenly realizing how you could turn sustainability and the kind of business side into architecture. And it was inspired by a book that I was reading. It was 2015. I was in Panama on holiday, and I was given, I've got a copy of it next to me, this book to read by a chap called Chris Hines, who's the founder of Surfers Against Sewage and the director of the Eden Project, sustainability director of the Eden Project. And it was Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard, who's the founder of Patagonia. And he said, read that, I think you'll find it interesting. Now, straight away, Let My People Go Surfing as a surfer and owning a business, sort of I thought, yes, probably read that. But it was way more than I could have ever kind of expected. It was about it was written in a way that was really digestible and really kind of transferable to, I think, the architecture model, and to be honest, any business model. It was understanding this theory of triple bottom line sustainability. So thinking about the environmental, which to be honest, has been my sort of focus from my early years of studying, through to the social impact, and the social impact being, from an architectural perspective, the people that are affected by the projects that we do and the way they use them, but also the social impact of the business, to try and keep it healthy, make sure that the people that you're working with as a team are all kind of happy and positive. And I've got a saying, which is, I can surf when it's daylight, but I can draw pictures when it's dark. So sometimes if the surf's really good, I'll disappear and go surfing on the premise that anyone else can do it as well. We have flexible working. You know, there's something that you need to do and enjoy. If you can't do it outside of the working hours, you're more than welcome to go and do it in the working hours, but you just kind of balance it up, and it's your responsibility. So there's a real big part on the social side. And then financial sustainability. You can't achieve any environmental benefits and social benefits if your business doesn't stand up. So for me, that was crystal clear in this book, and it was written as a manifesto. So Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, it's also subtitled "The Education of a Reluctant Businessman." Had no intention of becoming a businessman at all, but just kind of grew out of making climbing gear that was good, that lasted, and that evolved into a business where they do seasonal business. They would say, "It's climbing season, you won't get anything from us, but there's a mail order catalogue for the other 6 months of the year where we'll work." And then from that, it grew into a successful business, not without any moments of real fear and danger within that business, but they learned from it and they grew. Yvon Chouinard then spent 10 years writing a manifesto that he could share with the rest of his team to make sure that the ideas were crystallized as to what the business was founded upon. And those manifestos, I think, can be taken into any business and kind of materialize. And they are based on that triple bottom line sustainability. So yeah, he spent 10 years writing them. It's then been reissued, this book, which is another 10 years on, and it shows how the business has developed based on those manifestos, which makes it a really interesting read. But for me, that kick-started it, and that was when our B Corp journey kind of started. That was the embryonic stages, albeit it's taken till now for us to actually register our application, and it's been quite a long old journey in between.
Amazing. Thanks, Adam. And also, just so people know, the link, Patagonia, so the company that Yvon Chouinard set up, were a big part of setting up the B Corp certification themselves. So you can actually see, when you're reading this book, elements of the certification in it. When they say we trialed this and we think this is really important to the way businesses have done, you can so see that that's fed into some of the questions. And I'm noticing questions pop out, but perhaps that's just because I spend way too much time in that assessment. I know the questions too well. But anyway, it was really cool to hear Adam talk about that. And Adam mentioned the book a few times when we were going through the process. And I think it really crystallized when me and Oscar did a workshop with the team at APG, how much they've really bought into this vision, and how much they're directed by principles and with this kind of desire to do business differently, but in the right way. And so me, Oscar, and Will were all quite inspired to read this book, Let My People Go Surfing, which is why we all held it up at the same time. And we've been challenging ourselves with some of the things Yvon Chouinard's been bringing up. I was just wondering, Adam, for those of you who don't know, the structure of the book is there's like a history part. He talks about, how he got to be the owner of this. There might be, are they $1 billion company? I don't know. They're certainly hundreds of millions. And after he's gone through the history, he has these philosophies like product design philosophy, marketing philosophy, environmental philosophy, and all this. And we're currently going through the process of challenging ourselves with these philosophies, saying what do we agree with, what don't we agree with, what could we learn from?
Right, Elsa, take off your no caller ID because I didn't pick it up because of that.
Sorry, I don't know what that was about. But Adam, I was wondering if any of those philosophies were particularly important to you and particularly inspired the way you guys do work at APG.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. And I think that's a really important part of this book. So the philosophies that it has within it. There's sort of a list of them. I'll just run through them to sort of paint a wider picture. They've got a product design philosophy, a production philosophy, distribution, marketing, finance, HR, management, and environmental. So it's quite broad, but it sits within those three spheres of social, environmental, and obviously financial that we're familiar with through the B Corp journey. I think for us, there's two sides to how these philosophies have influenced us. One is in our product and what we create, so the kind of output of our business. But then there's the same sort of reflective part of how we work within our business, where these philosophies can kind of sit. And it's, in a way, it's much like making clothes, making buildings and landscapes. You're selecting components which you then compile together through the use of skilled labor to create a building or a landscape, in the same way that it could be to build or to manufacture a coat or a jacket. So I think one of the big things when we're looking at what we do, it's about the kind of source of where the materials come from. Are we resourcing low carbon materials? Are we using that as part of our design philosophy? So one thing that I think probably makes our design process slightly different to many of the others, and I'm sure many will catch up, and we're not the only ones doing it, but it's thinking about the amount of embodied carbon that's in the selection of the materials that you use, thinking about the longevity of the materials, the robustness. How do you create something that could be maybe taken apart at the end of its life cycle? So thinking about, instead of that sort of linear take, make, dispose, can you then have a more sort of recycled content material? How can it be repurposed into building, and how can it be unpicked and reused at the end? So kind of thinking about the design process from the materials that are used. Also, what opportunities are there for using local labour, and particularly when you work somewhere down in Cornwall, for example, got a number of sites where it's a peninsula, you've got a limited amount of labour. How can you take the material choices to work with the labour that you've got, and how can you potentially upskill one and the other? So there's opportunities for kind of betterment through design, and that's sort of in a very similar way to thinking about where things are going to be made, how they're going to be shipped, and whatnot. So I think those philosophies really influence what we make. And then internally, I think one of the big ones was the kind of HR piece within the book. And one of the things that struck me was that it started off with a group of friends that kind of grew this company, and then as they got slightly older, they ended up having kids, and then they were bringing the kids into the workplace, and that was kind of part and parcel of it. The kids were there. It was then becoming a bit of a disruption, so they created a nursery. They were one of the first companies to build a nursery within their business. It was about finding ways to keep your team together and to keep them happy and healthy. And I think that's a really lovely approach to business. And instead of thinking about your business as resources that you kind of bring in to do a job, it's more about how do you create a family or a team to work. So I think that's something that we're trying to create by bringing everyone into the process of B Corp as best we can, in a managed way that is not a lot of voices. The size of our company, there's 12 people in it, so we're quite a medium-sized architectural firm, but it's quite an easy number of people to engage in the whole process. So I think that's kind of a way that we've been bringing those philosophies into what we do and how we do it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's really good. Kind of what you're saying there just reminds me of literally the bit I was reading last night, because it was very clear when you read this that he's like, this, I don't want to make my employees fit their lives around Patagonia. I want Patagonia to fit around their lives. And he mentioned this funny story about getting some external consultants in to look at the way the business is run, see if they become more efficient. And apparently they were just astounded at how they'd managed to keep all these people that basically were what the consultants described as like these rogue renegade people that just wanted to do their own thing. They were free thinkers and they were excellent workers, but it's like, I don't know how you've managed to keep them for 10 years. And working at the same place, and he credits it to the fact that it was flexible working. We made it work for them. They could still do their climbing when they wanted. They could still do X, Y, Z. We just asked that they put in the hours, but ultimately made it work for them, which is like amazing and really inspiring, and just feels like the right order of things, to be frank. But anyway, grounding this back into B Corp, because Adam, you guys at APG, you tried going B Corp once before coming to chat to us. We've been going through the process. You've come to a few of these meetings. There's probably quite a few people on this call who are either going through the process themselves, have gone through it, or at least thinking about it. Have you got any tips that you would offer, or any insights you'd give to those who are potentially either thinking about it or midway through the process?
Yeah, so I think, I don't want to test anyone with dates, but as I was saying, I read this book in 2015. I took over my role as a director in APG in 2018, and the first thing that I wanted to do was to become the first architectural B Corp. So in 2018, we started the process of the B Corp assessment, and it was difficult at that time. We were the first architectural practice trying to go through it, and lots of the questions weren't necessarily framed for an architectural practice in the UK. And it's an American-based system. There's a lot of American language and a lot of American sort of almost like requirements from an environmental perspective within their built environment that they were using that were completely different to what we do in the UK. So there's a bit of a disconnect between how we can kind of perform and how the businesses work. So we spent about a year going through the assessment. We submitted the initial assessment. We were working through questions with the B Corp team and trying to fit it in and around business. It was taking quite a lot of our time, and we found that quite a lot of the time we spent was just on trying to find a common ground on which we could kind of score ourselves on. 2019, we were still looking at it, but it was starting to take a bit of a back seat. And then obviously 2020 happened and COVID hit, and we just parked it. One thing I would say is that the whole COVID movement, the communications that happened, the fact that we all had to isolate and whatnot, I think gave everybody a different perspective on what they want work to be, whether they want to work from home or work in a more connected way. And that's really helped us have flexible working. But it also made it quite hard in a way to focus on the B Corp process. Now, when we were coming out of the B Corp, out of the COVID movement, we wanted to refocus on B Corp and make it a real focus. On the call here, we've got Josie, and then Josie on a wave so everyone can see who you are. And then we've got Ian, my fellow director. And it was Josie who came across Future Shift and said, Ian, I think this might be a useful tool to refocus us and to kind of give us a hand-holding sort of structure in which we can work. And that was when we came back to it. And I think what we noticed was when we went through the assessment, and Tom, when we went through it the first time, we were super harsh on ourselves to create that baseline. Really, really harsh, and wouldn't accept anything unless we could prove it. And what it highlighted was that we were doing a huge amount of the kind of core components because we'd been thinking about it for sort of 7 years or so as to how that affects our business, but we hadn't actually documented any of it anywhere. And I think that was such a useful process to go through, to actually sort of reflect on what we're doing and what we can then do to kind of record it, to go through this process and create collateral that will support business when new people come in, or when we're trying to win work, that actually evidences and justifies the thinking that underpins the company. So I think from our journey of trying to feel it out ourselves, speaking with B Corp, getting quite tied up in knots, through to having someone that's been through that translation process and being able to go, you know what, actually you're doing quite a lot of this, stakeholder doesn't just mean your business stakeholders, it's a wider thing. And going on a kind of broader journey has been a really helpful process to get us going. And I think it's exciting to understand where other people have been on their journey and how that's helped them as well.
Yeah, that's so true. And architects are particularly in that weird place of the art, it's quite Americanized, so it's really hard for UK architects to engage with it properly. But once you do the kind of translating, when you speak to other UK B Corps and to B Corp themselves, actually architects generally score really well. So it's like once you can get over that hurdle, it's actually really easy to get points, to get a passing score. So it's kind of, it gives and takes, and they are changing the certification or the process of getting certified, and so maybe it'll be easier in the future. But yeah, right now it does need a little bit of translation work for sure.
Yeah. I think as well with that translation, I know we've been talking about it, Tom. We are as part of the built environment construction sector, there are other professionals that aren't necessarily architects, that are kind of quantity surveyors, project managers, that have been going through the process as well, and they've really helped with the translation of what they've gone through to kind of compare regulations in the US with what we're doing in the UK, and to try and almost like square that circle. So what I've noticed from this process is that there's an opportunity within the sort of built environment space to almost have a B Corp approach to how you deliver projects. I think could be really exciting.
Yes, yeah, totally. And as that network grows, hopefully between suppliers and all that, being B Corp, this hopefully B Corp network grows. It should hopefully make it easier. We're all after the same things from each other.
I think there's got to be some care though. I was chatting to a contractor the other day, and we were talking about B Corp, and that they had a misconception that because they're contractors they couldn't do it. It just wouldn't work for them. But I also think that the sort of terms around B Corp are sometimes, at the moment, because it's becoming more and more well known, it's almost like getting misconstrued for sort of just typical good business, the ESG sort of side of things. And I think there's a danger that it could be devalued through misunderstanding.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that surprised me is actually how flexible it is to different companies, because it seems ridiculous to have one assessment more or less for every different type of company. And obviously it's not perfect a lot of the time, but it does a pretty good job for quite a large array of different companies.
I hope everyone had as much fun as we did putting this on. Always good to see friendly faces around, and to see the community really come together. And yeah, I'll sign off for this one. Next one's in the month after next. Good luck with all your B Corp submissions and work, and I'll see you at the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.